In this lecture, we're going to talk about CSS modules. CSS modules are the new way to create CSS styles using variables. I'm going to start with the Create React app using their file setup. We have the node modules, the public folder, and the source file folder. In the folder, we have the normal files, the app, the index, CSS, and app CSS file. I also have a components folder that I added from the last video. In my components folder, I have a dummy component and a smart component. I'm going to switch over to my editor where I have the files loaded. I also have my terminal already up and running. If I want to go ahead and start my server, I will type in yarn start. Now that I have my server up and running, you can see here I have some styling added to this div. Let's take a look at the files. In my components folder, once again, I have the smart component, which is a class component, and I also have no styling added to this. I will look at the dummy component next. In the JS file, I have a constant. I called the component dummy, and I'm going to pass through some props in order to get the dummy component to work. Before I get any further into this lecture, I did want to take a minute to show you that React recommends that you place each component in a folder. And within the folder, it should contain the CSS file and the JS file. Any CSS styling should go on that CSS file. Otherwise, we're going to create something called CSS modules. CSS modules are the new way to create a CSS style and have it applied within your JS file. After doing a little research and figuring out why you would use the modules versus the actual CSS file. After plenty of research, it says that the CSS file is slightly faster at the current moment. So right now people are still using the CSS files because it is slightly faster. However, if you're working with large applications, they're introducing something called CSS modules, which is creating a variable within your component. You can add the CSS style above or below the component. If you were to use CSS, you would want to import the file in the head like I have here. Import, and then I'm going to locate to the file directory of the CSS file. However, I'm not going to use the CSS file for this component, so I'm going to comment that out. If you're not using the CSS file, then clearly you shouldn't have the import in there. But for this lecture or the demo purposes, I'm just going to leave that in this file for right now. Next, I will create the style using the CSS module method. In my dummy component, I will add the style to this paragraph tag here. In order to do that, I will need to create a tag called style, and I will need to have that equal to the name of the style that I'm going to create below. This will be the variable name, and this will be the name of the style. It needs to be encapsulated in curly braces in order for it to work correctly. Down below, I will write my variable. I'm going to use a constant. It is common for you to call it styles in React. You will see that a lot. The majority of people that will write will call it styles, and then they will have it apply here. So it'll be styles, and then whatever that class name is going to be. Here I'm going to create a style called container, and then I'm also going to create one for the paragraph so I can style the actual paragraph itself. In React, they recommend that you use Flexbox in order to style all of your components. In CSS modules, they are written exactly like JSON objects. We will have the object name, the key, and then the value of that object. Here I'm going to create the container using the Flexbox method. I'm going to display that flex, and then the flex direction could either be row or column depending on how you choose to style it. The next object I'm going to make is going to be called my paragraph, and I'm going to set the color of the font to blue. If you were in CSS, the CSS style would look more like this. It would be background hyphen color, and then quotes, and then it would actually be a semicolon at the end. However, we are using the JSON method to write objects, which means that we will need to have a camel case instead of a hyphen. In your CSS, wherever you would have a hyphen, just go ahead and camel case that, and it should work exactly the same. For instance, if I use flex direction in your CSS file, normally it would look like flex hyphen direction. However, with CSS modules, it needs to be camel cased. I will scroll back up to the top. Once again here, you could see that I am using the style of containers, so that's going to style this as the container tag and place a background color of blue. I have actually not used the paragraph tag. If I were to use that down the road, I would add something that would look like this. And I just copy and paste. I'm going to call that my paragraph. Just say hello, just so that you can see the color change to blue. And clearly you're not going to see that because it's on a blue background. I will change this color to red so that you could see it if it's placed on the blue background. I will add the span tag here, style equals styles dot my paragraph, and it will say hello. You can now see that it's written in red and it does say hello. That is simple CSS modules. You can make it more complex by adding multiple object names in the variable itself. That concludes this video on CSS modules.